I have now completed over 300 flights with this exact DJI Avata 2. So how has it held up? What are the things that I love about it? What are the things that annoy me about it? And should you go out and buy one in 2025? Well, the short answer is absolutely, but it's not that simple. And make sure you stick around right to the end to see the one thing that I really wish I knew before I bought this Avata 2. So if you're new around here, my name is Justin. It's great to meet you. And if you've been here before, it's great to have you back. So let's get into my long-term review of the DJI Avata 2. Okay, I'm going to be honest with you here. When I first bought this drone, I didn't know what to expect. And to be completely transparent with you, I actually wasn't all that excited about getting it, having already been flying FPV for a while with 5-inch drones and things. But I knew that I wanted to try one out, and boy did it make an impression on me. So now with almost 300 flights under my belt, I'm in a pretty good position to tell you what this drone is actually like. I'm going to start off with one of the bad points, and that's going to be wind performance. This drone in the wind is really not a great performer. We can see here there's actually a lot of surface area here, especially with the ducts that wind can sort of grab onto and manipulate the drone's position with. Now, if you're flying in manual mode, this is also less noticeable because you can control the angle of the drone a little more accurately, but it still gets blown around quite a lot. And if you're trying to chase things or follow a specific line and the wind is blowing across the direction you're trying to fly, it does make things very, very difficult. So in that situation, this is probably not the drone to actually be using. That's when I would pull out my 5-inch drone. It cuts through the wind a lot better. There's a bit more weight behind it, and it just doesn't get blown around as much as the Avata 2. But it does actually take quite a fair bit of wind before you start to really struggle with this guy. And on sort of a light wind or light to moderate wind, you can actually still get away with getting pretty good footage out of this. But just be aware that the wind performance on this drone, you are going to notice it. And if you're coming from something like a Mavic series drone with a 3-axis gimbal, then when the drone is sort of faced adjacent to the wind, you're going to notice that it's cocked over, and the image you're going to see in the goggles is also tilted. Now, I saw a lot of this at the start when this first came out, that people were saying, is there a problem with my drone? The image is all off to one side. And that's just because the camera only stabilizes on that single up and down axis. So if the drone tilts over to sit into the wind to stay in the same place, the image you're going to see is tilted. I'll show on the screen now. If I'm pointing adjacent to the wind, the drone will be tilted. And then if I turn around to point into or with the wind behind me, the drone will remain level because it's on that same axis. And then if I spin a bit further, we'll see I'm now again adjacent to the wind, and the drone is going to be tilted to one side. So wind performance, not the best, but you can still get away with flying it in decent winds, but just be aware that it does struggle. So moving on from that, let's say we're on a fairly calm day. What is the actual performance of this guy like? Well, in good conditions, the performance of this drone is actually really quite impressive. That's one of the things that impressed me most about this guy. I really wasn't expecting all that much from it, but it flies really well. Granted, it does have the Avata 2 wobble that we've come to know, where it just sort of bobbles around a little bit as it's flying. Especially on windier days, this is more noticeable. But to be honest with you, I don't even notice it anymore because I've flown this guy so much. That's just the way it flies, and the footage can still be stabilized absolutely fine. But yeah, this thing is actually such a capable drone. When it comes to flight performance, especially as a Cinewhoop, I mean, the tuning, like I said, could be a little bit better because it bobbles around a bit. But this drone has been tuned more for efficiency than it has for freestyle locked-in performance, so you got to give it a little bit of the benefit of the doubt in that situation. I've done everything from diving down the sides of volcanoes to flying nice and slow in hotels and things, and it literally can do it all. This is one of the most versatile little drones that I've ever seen. The fact that we have that DJI stabilized normal and sport mode means it makes it so easy to do nice, slow, intricate maneuvers if that's what you need it for. But then you just flick it into manual mode and you can be skimming along the top of the sand and the water at the beach. You can be surfing along the treetops, diving down mountains, all kinds of things. This is a seriously versatile and capable machine, and I like just how rounded it is. It can do so much all in one package, and it's just so easy to put in the bag, take with you. It's just such low hassle. The next thing that I really like about this guy is, like I said, normal and sport mode. What it allows us to do, especially for most of us who like flying predominantly in manual mode, takeoff and landings are now so much easier. All you do, put the drone down, stick it in normal mode, do a normal takeoff, flick it into manual mode, and then fly away. You don't have to take off in manual mode and get immediately going. And then the same with landing, you just bring it back somewhere near to your landing area, press pause or flick it into normal sport mode, and then just land it normally. It's so easy. Now, if you do want to still take off and land in manual mode, you can do, but for me, it just makes more sense to take off in normal mode. Now let's move on to talking about signal performance. Now, the Avata 2 comes in two different sort of signal configurations. You have CE and FCC. Now in CE regions, the signal performance is honestly not that great. You can get a fair distance with it, but because the output power is so low, as soon as you get a few trees in between you and something, then the drone really is going to start to lose that signal. Now, if you're in an FCC region, then signal performance goes up way better, and it's literally night and day how much better the signal performance is in FCC mode versus in CE mode. So talking about FCC mode performance, honestly, it's actually freaking insane. The amount of stuff you can put in between you and the drone and still have good connection is phenomenal. The range distance wise, also phenomenal. 04 has honestly taken things to the next level. 03 was already fantastic, but the 04 transmission on this guy means that especially if you're in FCC range or FCC mode, you're gonna have some serious trouble trying to lose this guy. Now, obviously you put enough stuff in between it, you put a mountain in between you and the drone, you're gonna lose signal, and then that's where you're gonna have to rely on the return to home, things like that. But otherwise, in most normal situations, the signal performance is actually freaking amazing. Moving on from signal performance, now let's talk about image quality. Now, image quality is something that on this style of FPV drone from DJI has never quite been up to par until we got the Avata 2. The image quality coming out of this drone is honestly, it's stellar. I was so impressed with the image quality coming out of it. I didn't actually expect it to be as good as it was, but then when I was first taking a look at the footage and as time's gone on, I'm just like, the image coming out of this is actually so good. And it got to the point where I was flying my other FPV drones with GoPros on the top, and I was just starting to dislike the GoPro footage. It didn't look as nice as this, and it was more hassle to color grade that to match everything else. And it got to the stage where I was like, you know what, I think this is actually better than a GoPro, and I got rid of my GoPro, swapped it out for an Action 4, which is exactly the same basic camera that's in this guy, and I was using that on my FPV drones instead. I thought it was a better image, it was easier to color grade all my things together more seamlessly, and basically the image quality coming out of this, you have to be hard pressed to be disappointed with it, because honestly it is absolutely stunning. Very good in low light conditions too. I fly this a lot of times at sunrise, sunset. I just predominantly enjoy flying at those times of day, and you still get amazing low light footage. On the original Avata 1, if the lighting was good, footage was okay. If the lighting was anything other than optimal, the footage would just fall apart. With this guy, it's got so much more flexibility. We've got that D-Log M color profile, which I absolutely love. The ability to color grade it however I like, retains more highlight, shadow detail, all that good stuff. Basically, the entire camera package with this is just something that as soon as I saw it and was actually using it, I was just itching for them to produce the 04 Pro Air unit, which we now have, so they can put this camera in any FPV drone I wanted, which I've basically now done. So image quality, insane. You will not be disappointed with this. If you are disappointed with the image quality, then you're gonna need to get yourself like a red Komodo or something, because when it comes to this sort of style cameras, this is as good as we're gonna get probably for quite some time. All of the clips that you've seen in this video have been color graded using my cinematic LUTs. Now, if you want a really quick and easy way to take your raw D-Log M footage into beautiful cinematic full color footage, then my LUTs are gonna do exactly that for you. I have my color correction LUTs, my D-Log M LUTs, and then my premium cinematic LUT collection. I'll leave all of those linked in the video description so you can go and check them out. Okay, the next thing that I want to talk about is this thing. The fact that everything comes in one little bag makes this guy honestly so easy to live with. With my other FPV drones, I have a separate controller, separate goggles, battery bag, all of that good stuff. So I have to pack all those things individually into my bag, and it just takes up a lot of space. Where with this Avata 2, everything fits into one bag. It's not the smallest of bags, but it's definitely not like insanely big. You can carry it on your shoulder. It's not super heavy. But the fact that everything here is just in one bag is just crazy, because like I say, with traditional FPV, we have so many different components which normally all have their own bags, and we have bulky chargers, all of this kind of stuff. So there's just a lot more stuff to worry about packing, taking with you, and then when you get home, you gotta recharge your batteries properly and put them at storage voltage, otherwise they're gonna damage the cells and all of that stuff. Where with this guy, you just put it in the bag, take it out. If you fly the batteries, good, just recharge them and then they'll sort themselves out. If you don't fly them, you don't need to worry about it because they'll sort themselves out. And I didn't think I would be flying this Avata 2 as much as I have. And I think one of the main reasons that I've been flying it so much is just convenience. The fact that I can just pick this bag up and head out with it to the beach if I'm going for lunch or something, and I can just pull it out, have a quick fly. It just means you fly more often. Now, if I was doing that with a traditional FPV drone, I definitely wouldn't be flying as often as I have with this. So getting this has just made me fly a lot more. So talking about being easy to live with, let's talk about battery life, battery performance, everything related to batteries. Now, basically I got the Fly More kit, and I actually also added another battery. So I have 4 batteries, which means 3 in the hub, 1 in the drone. They all still fit into the same bag that it came with. Battery performance on this drone has been very impressive, especially when you come from traditional FPV, where normal lipos will give you 5 to 6 minutes if you're lucky of flying. This guy, regularly I get 15 minutes of flight time. So I mean, it's stated I think 23 minutes in the manual or in the advertising, all that stuff, but real world I get around 15 minutes of flight time, which is, you know, that's 3 times longer than I would have done with a normal FPV drone. And I've got 4 batteries, and they're just so easy to live with. I just go home, plug them back into charge, they just charge up. I don't have to plug in all the different ampage rating and all that stuff. It just charges, and then if I'm not going to fly for a while, I don't need to worry about discharging them because they discharge themselves. All you have to do literally is just charge them when you want to fly, and that's it. It's so simple, so easy to live with, so forgiving. And then also the battery accumulation feature on the charging hub, I've used it a few times while I was out. Say I've discharged 3 batteries to maybe 35%, put them all in here, press and hold that button, it'll then charge all of those batteries into one, giving me probably another like 70–80% worth of battery in another one that I can go fly. So it's basically giving me like almost another full battery from the batteries I already have. So that feature, really nice feature. I've used it a few times, but yeah, battery performance, excellent. I've really had no issues when it comes to battery degradation over all of those flights. But obviously those flights have been through multiple different batteries. They've not all been done on the same one. So yeah, battery life, amazing, more than happy with it. Let's move on to the next one. Okay, so the next thing we're going to talk about is these DJI Goggles 3. Now, when these first came out, I know I liked them, but I wasn't fully just blown away. I wasn't like, whoa, this is next level, because I was already flying with the DJI Goggles 2, which were already very good goggles. Now, one thing that I have now noticed having the Goggles 3 for some time, getting to use them a lot more, and then going backwards and forwards rapidly between the 2 and the 3, I do prefer the 3 now. Now, it's down to a few things. Mainly it's due to the fact that all the images now in view, the optics are better on here. It is a slightly smaller image overall, but the optics are much better. One thing that was also swaying me a lot was the fact that the Goggles 3 were being flown on the Avata 2, which has a much better camera, so you're automatically seeing a better image anyway because of the camera you're flying through. Where the Goggles 2, I was seeing the image from the O3 Air unit, which was not quite as good as what we get on the Avata 2. Signal performance has been absolutely excellent. Battery performance also been absolutely fine. I can fly way longer than I thought I could on one charge, and if I do need to charge while I'm out, I can just plug into the little USB-C charger there, and I can just top my battery up as I'm flying or in between. It's no big deal. I've not really got any worries about battery life on this guy. The image pass-through, which was a big sort of announced feature when these guys came out, honestly, I think I've used this 4 or 5 times. I barely ever use it. It is a nice feature to have there, you know, to just be able to quickly double tap, but most of the time, like, it's so hard to see through these cameras anyway, and they're so zoomed in that I just don't bother using it. The joystick, I like the joystick. I didn't have any issues with the pad on the Goggles 2, but I do like the joystick on this. It's nice to have a physical button. But yeah, it's nice that it's just one single package, no wires, no extra battery and all that stuff. Yeah, no complaints on the Goggles 3. We'll continue using them, and I will probably end up getting rid of my Goggles 2 as I convert everything else over to O4 Pro. Okay, so now let's talk about durability. So when I was first making my notes for this video, I'd done around 260 flights. I'm now up to almost 300 flights, so durability-wise, how has this guy held up? Well, I think there are probably very few Avata 2s out there that have managed 300 flights without being completely destroyed, but this here is one of them. Now, one of the reasons is because I fly this drone within its limits. I don't try and push it too hard because I know that it's basically an all plastic drone. If you hit this in the wrong space at the wrong time, you're gonna break something. So when it first came out, there was a lot of people worrying about the durability. There was a lot of crashes and these things were getting smashed up left, right, and center. The previous generation of Avata 1 was a pretty durable little drone. This guy, not so much. Now, in my opinion, this is a better performing drone. It's better in pretty much every single other way. but it's not quite as durable, and you just have to bear that in mind. Now, speaking about my experience with durability, I've had a few incidents with this guy, and every single time it's walked away. It's been absolutely fine. I hadn't even broken a propeller in any of those crashes, and I basically recently just changed them because I had a few dings and nicks in them, but basically those propellers had done almost 300 flights. I thought, best practice, give them a swap out. But apart from that, there's a few scratches on the propeller guards in places where I was trying a little bit too much to keep up with some go-karts, and I pulled out the 5-inch after this because it wasn't quite up to the job, but we were having a bit of fun. So this guy literally smashed down onto concrete and it was fine. I think I was lucky because it literally hit the ground when it was dead flat. If I'd have hit at any sort of angle, we would have broken something. So it just goes to show sometimes you can be lucky, sometimes not so much, but treat this drone as it should be treated. Don't push it too crazy and don't be crashing it into, you know, massive trees, solid metal poles, all that stuff. You're gonna break something. And for me, in my opinion, it's durable enough to do what it's designed to do, so I have no real concerns. I mean, if I'd have broken more things over my time of owning it, then I might have had a bit more red flags about the durability, but for me personally, it's been fine. I know it's not been the same for others, but for me, thumbs up. If you're enjoying this video so far, you're also going to enjoy my free weekly newsletter where I give you the latest drone news, hot tips, and a little bit of a behind the scenes look into what's going on in my life. And you also get a bit of a sneak peek into what's coming up potentially in future videos. It's completely free to sign up. I'll send it to you every single week. So yeah, I'll leave a link in the description, go and sign up. And I've also been working on a cinematic FPV drone course, so if that's something that you'd be interested in, you can sign up to the waitlist down below. And if enough of you want it, I'll get it made up. And I need to get up from here because my knees are not as good as they once used to be. Okay, now let's talk about this. This is the FPV3 controller. Now I'll quickly gloss over the motion controller, but to be perfectly honest with you, I really haven't used it all that much, so I don't feel like I'm in much of a position to give a long-term usage stand on that. But for me, the motion controller appears to have held up completely fine. It's working now the same as it was back in the day. I've seen a few people that have snapped the joystick off the motion controller, but mine's been fine, but to be honest, I haven't really used it. So I'm going to talk more about this, which is the FPV3 controller. This came out along with the Avata 2. Now, this is quite an expensive little controller for what it is, but from my experience and how it's been for me, it's actually been a really nice controller to use. I love the fact we can just pull the thumbsticks off, we just unscrew them, chuck them inside the controller, and it just packs down nicely into the bag. I can fit everything into the bag, the motion controller, drone, 4 batteries, goggles, all that good stuff. The gimbals, I expected the gimbals to be much shorter throw than they actually are. A lot of people were saying with the previous gen that the gimbals didn't feel very good because they were quite short on the throw. These have actually felt pretty fine. I didn't feel like they were too short. The gimbal quality feels absolutely fine. Obviously, it's not quite as precise and nice as the Zorro Max that I've been flying with as well. But for what I expected it to be, it's actually, to be honest, it's exceeded my expectations. I just stick a neck strap on it, hang it from my neck. It literally barely weighs anything anyway. But I also love the fact that we have all of these dedicated buttons, the pause button, the start, stop, record button. That is a button that I really wish we had on traditional FPV so we could just start recording whenever. And all the flips and switches, they work absolutely fine and they've held up fine. Now, one thing, because this guy is no longer doing transmission directly to the drone, it's a much low power unit, so battery life is therefore much improved over the previous generation. And for 95% of the life of this controller for me so far, the battery life has been absolutely insane. I think I've charged it probably 5 or 6 times maybe in the time that I owned it, and it basically had just gone, I just got used to seeing it constantly on 4 dots, and then it would occasionally drop down to 3. So when it dropped down to 3, I would charge it up. Now, that hasn't actually been the case very recently. In the past couple of weeks, I have noticed a serious reduction in the battery life on my controller. I think my battery in here is on its last legs, which is quite strange considering it's only actually done a few charge cycles. But yeah, there was one point I charged it up, came back to it a week later, and it was down to 25% and I hadn't even used it. So I think this battery is on its way out. Now, I could send this off to be repaired by warranty, but to be honest, the way that I'm moving around a bit, by the time I move to my next location, which is where would be able to do it, the warranty is going to have expired. So I'm going to try and change the battery in this myself. I'm probably going to upgrade it to a dual battery setup because these now only have 1 battery because they're doing such low power output. They don't need 2 batteries, but if I'm going in there anyway, I might as well just upgrade it to 2 and get a bit more runtime out of it. So, but yeah, apart from that little issue that I've been having recently, the controller's been absolutely fine. I would easily recommend this to anyone. But yeah, let's move on to the next one. Okay, so the next thing that I want to talk about is going to be regarding to the actual design of this drone. The fact that it is a Cinewhoop makes this a very safe drone to live with and use. Because we have these guards around the propellers, it's really safe. If you bang it into something, you're not going to do any damage to the thing. Well, not very likely to unless you hit it very hard. And we're also going to not get damage as much to our propellers because we have those guards in place. Now what that means is makes it safer to fly around close to people, indoors, all of that good stuff. It makes this just, again, a more versatile drone. I could fly this drone into me right now, not be concerned at all about it doing damage to me. I'd be concerned about it falling into the sand, but I wouldn't be concerned about it doing any kind of damage to me. It's a very safe drone to fly. It's also got all of those DJI features, return to home. You know, if you lose signal, you've also got find my drone if the drone goes missing. Loads of good stuff in there. This is a very, very safe package to live with. But on the talk of safety, I'm going to now move on to another feature of this guy, which I don't really like, and that's going to be the height limitation. Now, there are often situations where I fly up the sides of mountains or volcanoes, etc. And the Avata 2 has a 500-meter height limit. But there are times when you could be flying up literally a mountain that's 45 degrees or more. And once you start getting up close to the top, if you run into that height restriction, the drone just stops and you can't go any further. So in some situations, it can stop you from getting the shot that you want. For me, it actually hasn't yet stopped me from getting a shot that I required, but I've actually known about this feature. So when I'm flying up something really tall, I'll make sure that I can take myself physically up to a higher launch point so that I can actually accurately summit whatever it is that I'm trying to summit. Now, I do have some projects in mind where this will struggle, but that's the case. We're having another dedicated freestyle cinematic drone, etc. It's going to come in handy because we don't have that height restriction on those drones, can fly as high as I need to. But yeah, height restriction, it can come in to spoil the day sometimes, and just be aware that if you do a lot of mountain diving, mountain surfing, that might be something that annoys you. There is a ways to get around that. You can apply for approval to increase that maximum altitude, but that is an extra step that you would have to go about doing. Okay, now let's talk about accessories. Now, in my opinion, there are only 3 accessories, if I can get all 3 fingers up, that you actually need with this Avata 2. You need a set of ND filters, you need a neck strap for your controller, and you need a landing pad for if you're taking off and landing off unstable or unsuitable surfaces and you don't want to do hand launches. Apart from that, I don't believe you need any other accessories for the Avata 2. Now, I've seen some Avata 2s out there that look like they came straight out of the freaking workshop at Pimp My Ride, or they were about to star in the Fast and the Furious. But to be honest with you, all of that stuff is just adding extra aerodynamic drag and unwanted effects. And to be honest with you, adding all of that stuff to the Avata 2 makes it more susceptible to things like the yaw tumble. It just makes it get caught more by the wind. There are some situations, granted, where I think having some bumpers on is not a bad idea. If you're doing real estate shoots a lot on things, you might just want some softer bumpers on there in case you bang into something. But to be honest, you don't need spoilers on this and all that stuff. But I mean, I've seen some crazy stuff. But yeah, you just need a good set of ND filters. I've been using these Freewell ones. They've been absolutely fine. I've been using them for about a year now. No issues really. Neck strap, like I say, for the controller makes it a little bit easier. And a landing pad if you want it. But apart from that, keep this guy naked basically. Just put some ND filters on it and you're gonna have the best flying experience that you can have. Okay, so the next thing we're gonna talk about is noise. So I'm gonna put this thing up in the air and you can tell me for yourself how you think the noise of this drone is. So let me get it up. There we go, bring him back here. And press pause and it sits there. So as you can probably hear, you can hear the drone, but you can actually still hear me very easily. This drone is really impressive when it comes to the noise department. I'm going to push it away a bit just so I can explain things a bit clearer to you. So yeah, when it comes to noise, the original Avata 1 had a horrible kind of death shrill. It was, honestly, it was a terrible noise. You could hear one of those guys from a mile away. If there was ever an original Avata in the air, you knew about it. This guy, the tone is way more pleasant. We don't have that high-pitched shrill. And as you're flying around and stuff, it actually becomes really quiet. So I'm just going to fly it around a bit as I talk to you about this. So yeah, I'm basically just flying it away. I'm probably 30, 40 meters away from myself now. And you already can barely hear it. All you can hear is a light sort of wind rushing. And when you're dancing around in between the trees and stuff, you really notice just, well, or you don't notice how much you hear this thing. Now, when I go out flying with other people with traditional Cinewhoops, or I get my Cinelog 35 V2 out, the Gepard C1, such a noisy drone compared to this, you really realize just how quiet this little guy is. Honestly, for the performance that you get out of it, the noise of this is more than acceptable. great job. Honestly, no complaints. So that's the noise part of it done. Now let's talk about one feature that I absolutely love about this drone, and it is that pause button on the FPV3 controller. Now, I rarely use this to sort of save myself from a crash, but I use it all the time to just press pause, have a minute, adjust my position, move around somewhere else, or change my camera settings. The fact that you can just hit pause and do that with an FPV drone, coming from traditional FPV, is just like, what? You can just pause the drone and change your camera settings or get up and move around a bit? It's completely alien. You can't just pause a normal FPV drone. Well, some people might disagree now. Betaflight 4.6 is coming and position to hold is now a feature, but up until that point, you just couldn't do that. It was like the thing of dreams. So the fact that you can just pause it, change your camera settings, adjust your exposure, all that good stuff, change your, what do you call it? Aspect ratio, whatever you want to do. Honestly, such a good feature, a feature I didn't realize I would love as much as I did. And that's going to take me on to the thing that I really wish that I knew about this Avata 2 before I bought it. I really wish I knew just how much I was going to enjoy and love flying this drone. If somebody had told me before I got it, this is gonna be a drone you fly the most in 2024, I'd have been like, nah, there's no way. But it was. Honestly, that was the drone I flew the most in 2024. I flew that thing multiple times a week, if not almost every day. Honestly, I just enjoyed flying it so much more than I ever thought that I would. I bought it with fairly mediocre expectations, and it completely just exceeded everything that I expected it to do. So if you're out there and you're contemplating getting the Avata 2, my recommendation to you, you might be thinking, oh, is there an Avata 3 coming? There probably isn't an Avata 3 coming in 2025. Go out there, get the Avata 2. It's the best way to get started in FPV in 2025 if you want to get started properly with all the right gear and have things that are going to last you longer into the future, and it's going to make things upgrading easier later on. So yeah, basically the Avata 2 for me, it's been absolutely fantastic. I would recommend it to anyone wanting another FPV drone. You're not going to be disappointed with it. That's going to be it. If you've enjoyed watching this video, you're also going to enjoy watching this video right here. And if that one doesn't speak to you, maybe this one here will instead. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.